Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock and a stitched circles die from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm just going to run this through my Cuttlebug and then die cut the circle out, and this is going to be the front part of my card. I'm then taking this set from Lawn Fawn. It says, "Have an utterly great birthday." I'm just going to mount that stamp on my clear acrylic block and then ink that up with the Tuxedo Black Memento ink. And I'm going to stamp that right below my circle. And then that is the front part of my card, so that's that part. Next I'm going to move on to make the waves because I am going to use the otter image, but I want the water waves kind of in the background, so I die cut 3 pieces of vellum with the stitched border die, the stitched scallop border. And I want these to be 3 different shades of blue, so I'm just using 3 different Copic markers. I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the B12, and I have the chisel tip, and I'm just going to run this over my vellum and so it will color that color. Now this works because these are alcohol markers, so the ink kind of just stays right on top of that vellum. It doesn't smear off or anything like that. I did try watercoloring on vellum and that did not work at all because the vellum just curled. So I wouldn't suggest using a water-based medium. The alcohol-based markers works really well though. So then I can move on to my second color. This is just a little bit darker than the first color. This is the B24, and you can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better since that first color was so light. So I'm just using that chisel tip and drawing lines across there, and I'm trying to work pretty quickly because the ink dries almost instantly and I don't really want a lot of streaks on there. So I'm just going over it a couple times just to try to even out the color. So then I'll move on to my third color, which is the darkest color, and that one got cut off, but it was the same exact process, and I used the B37. So I'm just putting a little bit of adhesive on the back of that white piece of cardstock that we stamped earlier, and I'm layering the waves on the back, so I'm kind of offsetting each one so that one is a little bit taller than the next one. So next I'm going to move on to my image, which like I said is that otter. So I'm just stamping this on a piece of Coordination's 110-pound cardstock with my Tuxedo Black Memento ink. I will be coloring this image in with my Copic markers, and that Tuxedo Black ink is my favorite to use when coloring with Copics. It works really well because the images don't smear. One thing I do before I start coloring though is I heat up the image and make sure that it is completely dried. I'm also stamping the little present so that the otter can hold that. So I'm starting and I'm just coloring in the entire otter image with the E37 Copic, and I'm going to do this pretty quickly. I'm not doing any special shading or coloring or anything like that. I like to just do simple coloring because that takes me long enough as it is. I'll add a little bit darker of a color with the E39. And then I'm going to go one step farther and add kind of an extreme dark color, which is the E49. So I'll go ahead and blend that in again with the E37. And then I colored in the present with a green and a blue Copic marker. And then I went ahead and fussy cut those images out. So next I need a background for behind the water that I created. I'm using the Faded Jeans Distress ink, and I just smeared that onto my nonstick craft sheet and I'm spritzing a little bit of water over that. Then I'm taking a piece of my distressed watercolor cardstock and just placing that into the watercolor. And I'm just spreading my finger all over the back of that cardstock to make sure that it is completely covered with the ink. I can pick it up and then I can place it back down into there just to make sure that all of the areas are covered completely. Then I'm going to go ahead and leave that watercolor on my craft sheet while I heat dry my piece of watercolor cardstock. Then I'm going to go back in and just place my paper down once again into the watercolor. And you can do this as many times as you would like. Just dry it and then keep building that color up. Once it's completely dried though, I can go ahead and start assembling my card. So I have my piece with the vellum, and I'm just going to add some adhesive all around the circle so that I can adhere the watercolor piece behind it. So I'll just place that behind the circle, making sure that no areas of the circle are uncovered. And then I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of that so that I can add it to my white A2 size card base. Next up, I get to add my cute little otter and present images on there. So I am going to put a little bit of adhesive. I'm using my Tombow Mono Multi Glue, and I'll just cover the back of the otter with this adhesive. And then I'm going to tuck him right behind the highest or the darkest wave. And then I'm going to put a little bit of my adhesive on the back of the present. And I'll just place that so that it looks like it is in the otter's arms. Alright, and then that is my finished card for today, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll try coloring some vellum with Copic markers on your next card project. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel if you're not already, and I will see you back here next time. Bye!